This happened to me when I was 9 in 2010. My friend in the neighborhood found a Ouija board in his brother's stuff while he was away at college. He told me what it was and asked me if I wanted to play with him. Trying to impress him, I said yes, and we went into his room and we tried it out. Nothing happened, and we were left disappointed. Later that week, he called me and told me that he looked up how to use the board properly and wanted to give it another go. I agreed, as I was more confident that nothing would happen. So we grabbed a bunch of scented candles and we placed them around the board and did the whole seance stuff. We asked the board if anyone was there, and it of course went to yes. We thought the other was messing around, but we agreed to take it seriously because I didn't really care if it was a stupid joke. We asked the ghost what its name was, and it spelled out Owen. My friend asked if it was a person, and it went to no. We asked what it was, and it spelled out demon. I then asked to prove it. We then heard a loud wail or roar that came from the garage. Keep in mind, it was only us in the house. It scared the shit out of us and we ran out of the house. We checked the garage. There was nothing there. Anyway, a few weeks go by and he tells me how he is having paranormal experiences. He feels like he's being watched whenever he is downstairs in the kitchen and living room. He feels someone sitting on the end of his bed every night. Every time he walks past the garage, he feels someone grab his wrist and pull it towards the garage. Whenever I went over, I always got the feeling that someone was looking at me from the ceiling. It was definitely unnatural. Then came the scariest part of all. We were at his house playing Army in his room while no one else was home when we began to hear heavy footsteps downstairs. Except whatever was making it had hooves. Then we heard someone begin to laugh and cough at the same time. My friend ran over and slammed the door shut and we hid. He hid under his bed while I hid in a closet. Then it sounded like someone began scratching the door with one big claw, like the ones raptors had on their big toe. He started crying and I was on the verge of tears. My friend yelled, "Leave us alone, Owen, you're scaring us." It began to stop and then we heard it run down the stairs. My friend got up and threw me out of the closet and grabbed a Ouija board that was in there with me. He ran down the stairs, ripped the screen door off of his gas fireplace, threw the thing in there, put the screen back on, and went to turn it on. When he was about to turn it on, we heard a loud moan from the basement, which was right behind my friend. He flicked the fireplace on and the board began to burn. That was the end of that, and we played outside since he was too scared to go back into the house until his parents got home. His parents came home and saw that he burned his brother's Ouija board. They grounded him and threw the burnt board away. That was the end of the paranormal experiences in my friend's house, and that's why I will never take part in one of those games again. This happened about 8 or so years ago, around Thanksgiving at my grandma's house. Everyone was asleep except for me. The only people in the house were my grandparents, my mom, brother, and I. No one else. I was on the computer because I couldn't sleep. I turned on a small TV to watch Adult Swim while I browsed the internet. At around 4:30, I started getting a chill up my spine. I heard some children laugh. Distinctly the voices of a little girl and a boy. I know I'm all by myself, so I turned to look at the TV and it was in the middle of a fight scene, so there was no way the laughter was coming from that. I checked the computer sound settings and I had every possible output muted, so it wasn't that either. I sat there confused for a few moments while the giggles of the two children were playing in the background. I figured maybe the radio in the kitchen was on. It was digital, so maybe it just came on for some reason, or it had a timer. I got up, and I kid you not, as I was walking to the door, with each step, the laughter grew louder. From giggling to guffaws to hard laughter. Once the guffaws started, I started to hear a baby cry as well. What's going through my mind now is, what the kind of radio show is this? And I just took 3 steps, nowhere near the door. I took a few more steps and the laughter turned hysterical, if not maniacal. The baby's cries turned into screams and wails as if it were in pain. I was trembling and terrified with each step I took to the doorway, but my mind was on autopilot. I needed to get out of there and across the hall to my mom, who surely would help me and notice the weird sounds too. The last couple of steps increased the laughter and crying to an almost deafening decibel. It was like I was at a concert and the speakers were directly in my ears, blasting noise. It was painful and scared the shit out of me. I took all the courage I had, and as soon as I reached the doorway, I was going to sprint. I started to run, but then someone shoved me. I felt these hands at my chest push me back into the room with enough force to throw me off balance. The crying and laughter stopped as soon as I was back in the room. This all happened within 20 to 30 seconds, but it felt like 10 minutes. I was so scared, I cried and slept in the tiny armchair before my grandma came into the room and made me sleep in her bed downstairs. I still don't know what caused that noise, and I probably will never know. Years ago, a few friends and I went to hang out in a graveyard. Stupid thing to do for a bunch of bored 18-year-olds on a weekday night. But what happened next was very real to all of our experiences. We were driving my friend's really old beat-up Subaru through the massive graveyard. We stopped to get out and walk around. We walked down the hill and came across a little pond. There was someone sitting on a rock on the other side of the pond. The figure was all black, and we couldn't make out any features other than the fact it looked like a man who was wearing some old style top hat. Stupid us waved and shouted hi. He didn't show any acknowledgement or wave back. The man sat on a rock, still. All of a sudden, he jumped to his feet, started running towards us in the water, and then vanished in thin air about halfway on the pond. My friends and I screamed and ran back to our car. I didn't want to believe what we saw, but we all saw it happen. We got back to our car and tried to start it. It wouldn't start. We were starting to panic and getting very scared. The car would not turn on no matter how many times we tried. That's when we heard some banging on the car from the back. It wasn't a constant bang, but every few seconds or so, we'd hear it. Nobody was outside from what we could see in the dark, but something was making a noise in the car. At this point, I'm having a full-blown panic attack, screaming and crying to get us out. Luckily, my friends seemed a bit less panicky than I was, and helped me keep calm. It was obvious that they were just as freaked out, however more speechless and pale-faced. We would have left the car in a graveyard and walked the long journey to the exit if it wasn't for the banging on the car. We didn't want to get out and leave. After about a minute, the banging stopped. I'll call my mom to give us a boost, I thought. I'm not entirely sure why none of us thought to call sooner. However, I don't believe anyone thinks rationally while panicking. At this point, 15 minutes had gone by since we had got back in our car. I opened my phone and started dialing, and realized I had no service. None of us had any cell service. We bantered back and forth for a few more minutes trying to figure out what to do, and decided against leaving the car because whatever was outside was not what we wanted to come face to face with. The next 30 minutes were spent trying to get her car started. No banging was heard afterwards, but we felt this heavy feeling around us, almost as if it created this pressure on our chest. It's quite difficult to explain, as I've never felt anything like it before. Finally, her car started, and she hit the pedal to the metal. We sped out of the graveyard so fast. Immediately after crossing the gates, all of our phones regained cell service. I'll never be able to explain what caused any of this or why certain things happened. One thing I know for certain is that someone or something was out there, and it was not an animal or human.